Hi there, I'm here to give you a little bit of assistance on 6.2. This is factoring when you have a leading coefficient of 1. And so that means that this number in front of your first term isn't there. We assume it's a 1. Okay, first of all, we need to kind of backtrack a little bit and remember back when we did FOIL. Remember, you do FOIL when you multiply two binomials together, and that's just an acronym to remember how to multiply. You take the firsts and you multiply them. And then you take the outer and you multiply them. And then you take the inner and you multiply. And you take the last and you multiply. And typically what will happen is these middle two terms will combine because they're like terms. And you get an x squared in this case and a minus 1x and a minus 6. All right, so we have to remember that when we multiply these first, that's going to get us this number. When we multiply the last, that's going to get us our last number. But the most important thing, the trickiest thing for us on this is probably going to be when we do our outer and our inner. Those will combine to get us this middle term. So let's try number 1 here. We have c squared plus 10c minus 24. And I'm just going to immediately set up my two binomials. And remember that when you multiply the first, it's going to get you your first term. So I'm going to have a c and a c. And when I multiply the last, I'm going to get a 24. The thing is, there's lots of options of things that multiply to 24. I could do 24 and 1. I could use 12 and 2. I could use 6 and 4. I could use 3 and 8. I have a lot of options here. The trick is to pick the right ones. Now, as long as this coefficient is 1 in front of our first term, it's a little bit easier because basically you're just looking at these factors of 24. And I want this to, one's going to have to be positive and one's going to have to be negative so that I get a negative 24 when I multiply. So when I look at these options over here, one's going to be positive and one's going to be negative, and then I'm going to combine them to get that middle term. So I'm looking probably for some that will have a difference then of this 10. So 12 and 2 would work nicely. I could put a 12 and a 2. And since I want my 10 to be positive, I'll make that a plus 12 and do a minus 2. That will get me my negative 24, but it also gets me on my outer, I get a negative 2c, my inner is a positive 12c, and those would combine to a positive 10c. So I've got it right there. Now this works great as long as this coefficient here is 1, where you can kind of just think through it pretty easily without too much of the guess and check or trial and error they suggest. Okay, so let's keep moving. Let's try this one. This one we have two variables in. That's okay. Just set it up same way. And I'm going to have p and p, just like always. Factors of 9, I could go with a 3 and a 3, or a 9 and a 1. Okay, this time notice that this sign is positive in front of my 9. So that means that these two numbers that I choose, the signs will be the same. It's either going to be a positive times a positive, which gets me a positive 9, or a negative times a negative that would get me a positive 9. Okay, so basically since my signs are the same, I'm going to want these two factors to end up adding up to 10. So I think 9 and 1 would be a good choice then. So I'll put my 9 here and my 1 here, but notice that it's q squared. So I'm actually going to split that q, so it's really 9q and 1q. And then, since I want my signs the same, so that I'll get a positive, they're both pluses or both minuses, and then I go look at this term right here, and since it's a plus sign, I want both of these to be plus signs. And so you can kind of check your outer and your inner. There's my 1pq, and here's my inner 9pq. They're both positive. They're going to add up to a positive 10pq. I think a little trick to that, I always remember that if this sign is positive, my signs will be the same, and they will both be whatever that one is. If this sign is negative, then my signs are different, and I have to decide. I typically want my bigger one to be whatever this sign is.